Oh, it's even better. I never noticed the pop out at you heads.
It's been that way for
Okay.
6 months.
No, I thought it went to the corners.
Yeah, they go to it. Oh, okay. Okay. It does shoot. The very first one went to the corners.
Okay.
But the very first one was 2 minutes long, and we did that one like twice, and we were like, this is too effing long. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I made a shorter one, and I think they still go to the corners, or maybe they come at each other. I don't remember. But yeah, I thought it was sillier to make it like zoom out.
I think it's pretty funny.
So I did it. So I did that. What's up, Snow Dad?
Yeah, it's coming down here.
Is it in buckets?
You're supposed to get like 4 to 7 inches overnight. Night. I thought I'd go with Snow Dad. Another stream, another browser. Did you have to update Chrome?
No, and I'll tell you what. But I'm not done with you. I want to know. Have you had a lot of snow this winter?
No, it's been super mild.
This is good. This is like solid dad weather talk.
Yeah.
This is like peak dad.
Yeah.
It's been not a lot of snow.
Yes. Hold on. So my sister-in-law got my sister-in-law got my wife's brother-in-law
pregnant.
This is too much. No. Megan got Troy.
Megan and Troy. Yeah.
Got him a shirt that says, it's like very Midwestern dad. It says, "We really lucked out with the weather, huh?"
That's super good.
It's pretty good.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you have not had a lot of snow. We have not had a lot of snow. We've actually had like basically no snow. We had one significant snowfall. We actually had snow back in October for Halloween.
We did too. Like it was like a lot.
Yeah, it was like 3-4 inches.
I mean, for October,
for us. Yeah. And then one other significant snowfall, which was early January.
So I inherited a Craftsman snowblower, like one of those big for realsy snowblowers,
like 2-stage.
And from my, I say inherit, but I just mean that they moved to Arizona, and so I have this pretty for realsy snowblower. Haven't even really had to use it this year.
Really? Did you? So you just got it?
I mean, I've had it since they, maybe I've had it
years.
Jack's 8, so I guess I've had it like 8 years.
Dang.
Anyway, some years I use it. This year,
you do. Do you ever have problems starting it?
No, it has a plug. You can plug it into the wall, and then it starts up very easily.
Really?
As opposed to the just the pull.
I feel like 90% of the people that I talk to that own snowblowers like, oh yeah, I couldn't get my snowblower started, so I had to shovel anyways. And that is the reason that I don't own a snowblower. But you might be the reason I buy one.
Okay. We have a lot to cover today.
Yeah. Can I tell you about my browser?
Yes, tell me about your browser.
Okay, and then you can do all the shit that you want to do.
Okay.
Guess who's an Edge user?
You use Microsoft Edge?
I'm an Edge user.
Wow.
I guess. Yeah. No,
why?
Well, because a while back I had switched from Chrome to Brave because that was around the time that people were like, Chrome is sticking this weird tracking cookie in that you should be suspicious of. And I switched to Brave because I was like, oh, privacy-minded browser seems great. Brave had one infuriating bug, and that was, if you know me, which you do, you know that I like to work with lots of spaces on Mac.
Right.
It's like swipe left, swipe right.
I don't know why you like this, because it's a garbage metaphor on the Mac. It's not implemented well.
No, it's not.
Tools to do this, but even despite all that, you are really gung-ho.
I'm really into it. And I use a lot of browser. I open a lot of browser tabs and windows. And so like I'll have like 7 tabs in a window on one desktop, and then 15 tabs in a window on another desktop, and then 3 on the next desktop. Brave had this bug where when I used vertical tabs, which was one of the huge selling points for me, I was really excited about it. So they're like on the side. Do you want me to share my screen and show you?
Yeah.
It's not weird. Dude, this isn't weird at all.
It seems so weird.
Oh, I can't share my screen anyways because I forgot to do the thing where you click share and then go into security and privacy preferences.
Should have known.
Anyways,
Oh, I've seen this.
so like the tabs are on the side of the
Yep.
instead of across the top. I really like that.
I don't understand that.
But
That's okay.
in Brave on Mac,
Yep.
after like anywhere from 30 minutes of usage to a
Mhm.
week of usage,
Okay.
it all of a sudden just starts leaving all of the tab strips from all of your windows on your current window. Like you don't have the browser itself, just the tab strip. And so you like swipe to a screen and there's 37 tab strips. And then you click on one and it bounces back over to the other space to look at
Oh
it.
my
And
God.
it's just maddening. Anyways, I just decided after that, I was like, I need a new browser. I was kind of looking at Firefox for a little bit.
Hold on, but you're still you're talking about using, like, you're still on a Mac.
I'm still on a Mac, yeah.
And Safari is
No,
just not.
I'm not gonna use Safari. Like,
Safari is just
stop
not in
trying
the
to make
running.
Safari happen.
Wow.
I don't know. It's I'm on a Mac, but I'm not in the Apple ecosystem in any other way. I'm only on a Mac because that's what I work on.
Safari is a very privacy-minded browser in its own right.
I don't really care. It turns out I don't really care. I sold my soul to Microsoft now.
Okay.
So Edge has all of my data.
Okay.
And so far I like it.
What's your default search engine, Bing?
It still is because I haven't changed it. It's horrible. I hate it. I'm
I've
trying to give it a
switched it-
shot. I'm trying to give it a fair shot because it is different. The results look different than they do from Google.
Yep.
And I think that could be a good thing.
I think it is.
Maybe
I
just
think
something I
Google
need to get
search
used to.
is becoming garbage.
It's just all ads.
Yeah.
And
It's
ads
so
that you can't
commercial.
identify from
Yeah.
The real thing, which is how we ended up going. My wife and I went to see, I'm sorry. We went to see a recording of Wait, Don't Tell Me, more
Oh
Dad
yeah,
Talk,
how'd that go?
NPR Dad Talk.
Yeah.
And she ended up buying the tickets from an aftermarket place
Yes,
because
you told
like
me this.
that was the top like 7 results when you searched for it were after or like what do you call it? Whatever you call it. Ticket resale places. And she ended up paying more than she needed to. But
You know that thing people do where they like measure the screen real estate and try to like identify how much of the real estate is like some kind of thing that's commercial versus what's like,
like the
true
real
search
content.
results. It's real bad these days with Google.
It's extremely bad, and it's there. They used to be more. It used to make it more obvious what was an ad and what wasn't.
Yep.
At this point, everything looks the same, and you cannot tell them apart. It's horrible.
So my story here is I'm trying to eliminate Google from my life because I think that they're bad for humanity. But in my own case, I've been through an evolution where I went through DuckDuckGo for a while, but now I'm on a paid search engine called Kagi.
Whoa.
Yes.
How much does that cost?
I think it's like $5 a month. I've only like started using it.
Just like,
and even then,
take my money.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is.
I'm just like trying it out. And like so far, the results are like excellent.
Yeah.
And I think that getting good search results has like a lot of value to me. So I think I'm gonna stick with it.
Definitely.
I really want them to succeed and like incorporate more. Like there's like actually 0 ads. Like even DuckDuckGo, of course, they're following the same kind of model that Google does, and so they sell advertisements. But with Kagi, you are the customer instead of being the product, and so there's incentive for them to do some more interesting things. One cool thing I've seen them do a couple times is maybe like 2/3 of the way down the search results page, like your like 10 results, they'll do like a little call out section that's like labeled blast from the past, and then it'll have like results that it knows are from blogs in 7 years ago or something.
Sure.
And like sometimes they're actually like excellent results because maybe they were like a blog post someone wrote maybe again 7 years ago, but it's like actually the right, like it's nothing has changed since then and it's still accurate.
It hasn't been superseded by like just like content farm garbage.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I do have more questions about that, but you were excited to program computers, so let's go.
I got to program some computers tonight.
Okay. Do you even want to, so do you want to go through an agenda or do you just want to like roll on stuff? The one thing that I want to call out is I want to look at that PR before we start.
Yes. So last time we we made a lot of headway on some stuff. We finally sort of landed on some solutions to problems that were kind of really in our way. I feel like I finally understand what sprites are and why I will use them and why it's like the right choice for what you and I are trying to do. We got the so like one big problem we had was when we ran in the simulator, we just like the entire screen was orange when we turned on the oh, you know what I'm trying to say, the thing that shows you what's
screen painting
or whatever. Yeah. And so we got it to go from the whole thing is always orange to just our part is orange and only when like things are actually changing.
Yes.
So we did that, but we just sort of spiked on it and we just sort of like got it to work. And then afterwards, I was so excited by that progress and so interested in learning more about some of the OO patterns that can be applied to this, that I did a pull request to sort of reorganize things.
Yes.
So maybe what I'll do is present my screen and show where I ended up.
Please do, because I can't.
Entire screen, this one, share, move you over here. Okay. To Nova. Okay. So this is main Lua, and I've added a few different files, a few different other Lua files here. Two that end in this screen suffix, and then one called game data. But if we go back to main Lua, the idea here in my mind was to import some collaborator objects, like instantiate them, and then use them in this, you know, init function here, call the init down here. You know, here's our Playdate update loop, and here's our cranked callback. So I wanted to like encapsulate some of this stuff in different files and leave this one to be at a higher level. So that was like the motivation.
Yeah. So this like it like reminds me of a little bit of like before the like JavaScript MVC wave. We even did like MVP, model view presenter types of things, where it was like we have a model of data, the view is the thing that renders it, and then there's the presenter that like wires up the view to the model. So like these clears and these renders are like the actions that the presenter would take on. I don't know. Did you ever do that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember if I did that particular step in the evolution to, you know, more modern JavaScript patterns, but I definitely had in my head of like the rendering of JavaScript components in my mind when I wrote some of this stuff. There's just like some more like common words we put around this stuff these days that I kind of wanted to hook into that a little bit.
Cool.
So let's see. I guess starting from the top, we have our stanza of import statements that are just from Playdate. Like these are just the things that you get from Playdate. And what I read somewhere was it's kind of nice to import them all in your main Lua file, even if your main Lua file doesn't necessarily take advantage of everything in here, because that means then these imports inherit those imports. Let me try that again. So game data is actually inheriting all of these imports, same with normal screen and QR screen. So I don't have to have those kinds of imports in the other. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, I mean, it seems backwards from how I would want to do it. My instinct is like, I want to put it closer to where it's needed.
That was my initial instinct.
And so if graphics is only used in normal screen, I would want to use graphics in there. But I wonder if there are issues if you like double import. If you tried to import it into two places, would it cause a problem?
Here's yes. I mean, so that's one thought I had as well. The other is like, I think this is like some syntactic sugar on top of this all compiles to a single file.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
the
fact that they provide some ergonomics, some ways to make it easier to work with separate files, that's for us. That's not for the computer. And so kind of got to play by their rules for what they're giving us here.
Cool. I'll accept it.
Yes. And if I've gotten any of that wrong, please let me know in the comments. Smash that subscribe button. One other things I saw in the docs a lot was like, it's actually more performant instead of littering your code with playdate.graphics.something.something.something, you should make a local called whatever and use this const construct to be able to, I guess, like destructure this in such a way that then it's like faster to then at the call sites do things like,
wow, that's unexpected. I mean, it looks like it's an alias of some sort, which seems like on the surface it wouldn't actually change anything. Right. It would just be like a new name for it. But with that const in angle brackets, maybe
this does something.
I would guess that that's the magic.
I'm just sort of like, again, just kind of following. I'm chiroculting for sure. Okay, so then here's state. So if we put our React hats on, basically what I'm trying to do here is establish something that contains my state and then pass it into, objects that are more pure is the wrong word, but like they don't know about global state. I'm like using dependency injection, right? I'm injecting into them state, and then I can manipulate that state, and then they can act on that state.
Yep, I like it.
Okay, then we have an init function. We have our cranked callback, our update callback, and then we invoke init. So the guts of init are all about the menu, and then rendering our normal screen.
And so this is like way tighter than what we were doing before, because we had I think we maybe had things abstracted into functions, so we weren't necessarily doing everything inside of the init, but it was like you would at least look at this file and it was 30 lines of rendering code right there for that init, which now this is a lot cleaner. It's more like you can read it like a like bouncing from chapter to chapter in the book, and you're like, if you want to know more about it, let's go look at the render for QR code screen.
Exactly. So and I had ideas that I abandoned around having some kind of like screen manager that would have a handle to all these different screens and know who to clear and who to render. It seemed a bridge too far over engineering. Rule of 3 would tell us that if we get a third screen in here, maybe then that's the time to do a refactor.
Right.
I just kind of let it go.
Okay. Cool.
This cranked callback, I kind of contemplated various approaches, but I decided to just do the math about whether or not like ticks.
I definitely was going to ask about this.
I thought about kind of like pushing this into the game data object. Ultimately, I decided against it, and I just did the thing in this callback. Maybe I'll change. Maybe we will change our minds about this, and if this is the right level of abstraction, because this is the only thing in this file that seems to do any kind of business logic, so to speak. But the idea then is like this updates state, and then this is a re-render step.
Right, and because on 33 you want to bail early to avoid that render.
Right.
I can see why it makes sense to basically take that little bit of logic, put it in here, whereas you might think it might be inside of that normal screen or something or whatever, just to prevent us from getting to that 36.
One more quick thought here is, I've programmed in other paradigms where you would have more patterns about how the view reacts to state changes. And one of the patterns that's pretty common, maybe not so much anymore, like in the React world, but it's like observers or like callbacks, like when the state changes, invoke this function. I considered for a moment, like actually having game data do like emit an event, like an event that's like I have changed, and then have these screens like do like listeners that look like listener functions or something. And then very randomly today I was reading around on the Playdate discussion boards, and one of I think it's a Playdate, they're next to their name it says like moderator, and so I don't know if every moderator works for Panic, maybe not, but anyway, someone
they get a little bit of a boost of credibility.
Maybe so. And he had actually shared some code that implements that observer callback kind of pattern. Anyway.
And did you like it? Like when you
I
looked
thought
at
it
it,
was
was it like,
I
does
thought it
it
was like actually
seem,
like very cool functionality, poorly implemented. You like
did you
had
leave a
like
comment?
every variable was a single letter. Like it was just like, you know,
Sure.
I don't know. But anyway, and then this is just paperwork, right? Like this, like we have reduced our plate. Like you might remember, like Playdate update. That's where we did everything. Like everything
Yeah.
happened in Playdate.
That's why
Playdate
everything was
develop
orange.
stage. That's why everything was orange. And now we've reduced it to just 2 pieces of paperwork that we want the sprite system to always update on each tick, and that we want our timers to update.
Cool.
Oh my God, I can't believe how slow I'm going. Okay, so let's go to game data for a moment. So this is our state. This little doohickey here is a addition to Lua that Panic provides to give us the illusion of classes in a system that does not actually provide classes.
Right.
And so then you like this is our init function on this class called game data. This is me initializing the ticks to 0. And then we have a crank counts function on an instance of game data that knows how to format itself in a sentence structure.
Sure.
And that's it.
One thing that I thought was interesting here was line 4, self.ticks equals 0. It's seemingly that was enough to make that a public property on game data, because if we bounce back over to main, all that's here is self.ticks equals 0. But in main on, what is it, 35, we're
You're
able
like,
to
how did
reference
you
that.
get to be able to say game
It
data.ticks?
seems like magic.
It's not annotated anywhere. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would expect to see some more ritual here around. Yeah. Like, how would you have a private property then? Yeah, it's very
Yes,
strange.
exactly. Yep. I mean, maybe you define it as local,
Maybe.
and that's how it is private.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay.
What else we got?
Let's bounce over to normal screen. So here again, I've plucked out GFX because they told me to. Like, why do I have to do this in this file? But it's okay to do it here, but it's not. But I don't have to import these. This is still a little.
Just do this, and the supplies will magically drop from the sky. It's fine.
Exactly. All right, so here's some knitting. So I'm taking in game data. And then my only functions are render and clear. And my thought was render would always start by clearing. And clearing is all about any properties on myself that are themselves sprites should have remove called on them. And you can do this little construct where you say, like, if truthy, basically, then I'm clear to call remove on it. And you'll see in the QR code screen when we have more than one sprite, we can do this multiple times.
I think we had some issue in the past where we weren't checking to see if self.sprite existed, and so there would occasionally be an exception thrown. So this is nice. I like this cautious.
And one thing you noticed was that my Nova doesn't like call out optionals, whereas like you had to do things like assert, maybe was the thing that you do.
Totally.
I still haven't figured out why mine's different than that.
Yeah, I don't get that.
All right, so then in terms of render, we clear, we set our sprite, and then the guts of the render are using our graphics context, using a sprite with text, calling that crank count to get the, like the sentence, putting it at 100 because why not? Or no, having it have a width and height of 100. I don't know, whatever. Moving it, adding it.
Yeah.
This is definitely stuff that feels like placeholder to me, whereas the structure of this overall feels pretty good. I'm not concerned about the details here. We can come back to that.
Yep.
Okay, we're almost done. QR code. This one's a little more complicated because I added a new feature, so to speak, which is that you're not just sitting there looking at you're not just sitting there looking at nothing. Now it just like says loading until the QR code comes to be.
That's great.
Seemed worth doing. Boop, there it is. Okay, so this is the loading state. I set up the the URL that I want to pass the QR code. I call that, and then inside of there we also clear, and then we also set up a sprite, and then in our clear we check for the existence of either sprite, and we remove them if they're there. And this is kind of the patterns that made sense to me.
Yeah, and so just pointing out maybe the obvious, but lines 19 through 26, that's all like, it's like when the promise is resolved, then that's not the language that they use.
But that's the idea.
But effectively, callback, right? The promise is resolved, then we call this callback, and that's how we end up clearing the loading function, and how we know when to call the loading function or clear the loading function or loading text.
And like the previous screen, there are chunks, there are hunks of Vue code in here that don't feel super polished, but I'm kind of like ignoring that because I wanted to establish patterns. I wanted to get more functionality going. I'm certainly happy to revisit this stuff.
Yeah, I love this. I think it's great.
Cool, thanks.
And you merged it already, so.
And
LGTM.
I think you merged it, but okay, so what? So like this works, like all of these things work. You can crank your heart to your heart's content. You can get a QR code.
And I have.
And you can get a QR code that embeds that number of cranks, goes to my server, and it just like doesn't do anything because that's like a 404. So at this point, I kind of want to like take a step back and try to figure out how we can like involve my Rails server and like actually persist these crank counts and like make an idea of a user for your device and those kinds of things. I don't have all these things figured out, so I'm definitely interested in your feedback on like modeling, the persistence, whatever. I think ultimately I need like a user, and a user has many like crank counts.
Yeah, and so then can you describe to me what you envision happening on the Rails server? Like this QR code takes you there. What happens when you go there?
Yeah, so one thing is I don't believe you can have a QR code that does anything but, besides a GET request. So
correct.
So my idea is you generate this QR code on your, it sounds silly, but like you generate the QR code on your Playdate. You grab your phone, you do the QR code scan, it goes to my Rails server on your phone, and you see a screen that says that is like in Rails parlance like a new screen. So you're about to create a model in Rails. And so it would know your user, and it would know your crank count, and it would know the day. And then you would say like, yep, I'm ready, create. And then that would post to the Rails server. And then that would create the like entry in that day's.
In your ledger.
For your crank counts.
Where you're tracking how much everyone is cranking.
That's
you,
right.
John, own all of this data.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Is that clear?
That's clear.
Oh, I'm surprised. Okay. It seems so convoluted that like I don't know what's clear or not.
No, I mean it totally makes sense. Like I still want to know more like beyond that user journey.
Sure.
But I think that's maybe not the time to talk about.
Can we quickly talk about this URL?
Yes.
So
it doesn't say butts anymore. It used to say butts.
So I think it should be like crank users.
Are we defining like RESTful?
Yes, that's correct.
URLs.
I'm talking REST right now.
This is a fun experience for everybody.
So, like, the device should be aware of its user ID, which we can talk about what that means. And then it's trying. Oh, and then maybe this is like /new. So we're gonna make a new crank count.
Or it's like a new entry in the crank ledger.
Yeah. So this is the kind of URL I'm thinking of, where it's like you're embedding yourself inside of a parent model called a crank user.
I think that's fine. One question that I do have here is the cranky user has an ID, which I imagine we can get the ID from the device, like some sort of identifying number from the device, I would think. What about like name and stuff like that? Are you interested in that data? Do you think that data, what is this search engine?
I know that's Kagi. So I'm not aware of any way for a Playdate app to get an identifier for the device or the user.
Oh,
this blows my mind that they haven't solved this for us. But this is from May of 22. It's possible something else has occurred, but I mean, end of message, September of 23.
Yeah, a UUID seems like it'd be useful.
I looked all over like the docs. I don't see like what I was expecting to see is like some kind of UUID that is private, privacy compliant, that just identifies the device, not even maybe the user, just so I could say,
oh man,
there's like a stable identifier for this person on this device. I don't think that exists.
So how are we going to do it?
So
like oh, go ahead.
So I think for now, I'm just going to hard code it
to 69.
And that's like not satisfying. It does not answer your very smart and also right on my mind question. But I sort of like want to kick that can down the road.
Care. Yeah. Okay. I think that's fine.
There is there's a keyboard on a Playdate. So you could create your user account, your Playdate, and then enter your user code.
However, you can't, we can't, can we write any sort of state?
And you can definitely 100% saving game state. You can write a JSON file.
So could we have them even enter their username on your server to make sure that it's unique, and then say, yes, it's good. And then in the game, well, no, we couldn't do that because it doesn't have internet access. Like they'd be doing that on their phone, right? Like they'd be like creating their account. But we could have them on the app, like go into settings or something and say, my username is Popowitz.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's possible. All of that's possible. Okay. And so because I feel like there is a path forward, but that's not the most,
we don't need to solve it
part to me.
Okay. I'm good. Let's make it 69 and move on.
So I'm not going to do that because I'm an adult. But this is what I was going to do. And so I kind of wanted to think like, okay,
a child, clearly.
So if this is the, oh no, this would be ticks. Okay, so if this is the kind of RESTful, thing I'm trying to do, then how can I take a step back and think about what Rails gives us by default and convention over configuration, kind of get ourselves to be able to support a URL like this.
Okay. So does this mean you want to move into Rails land?
It does.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
You've made it. Can you bump up your font size a little bit?
I can, but if that's too small, then I actually want to do this instead. Displays. Boop. Doop. How's that?
It's better. It's
still
small? On the small side, I think. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Just thinking, like, we don't have like the highest resolution stream, so because we're not paying for it.
No, and we never will. 1440 by 810. Oh boy.
Let's roll with it.
All right, that's the best I can do. Okay, this is the wrong project. I have two projects open. That's current champ. We want to be over. So monolithium.
How do you look at that all day?
Monolithium. Hard to read. Monolithium is my Rails application that is a conglomeration of every idea for a Rails application I've ever had, smushed into one monolith application.
It's a cute name.
It's a cute name. Thank you.
You're good at naming things.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So by default,
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day. What are we doing?
I don't know.
So what I want is like this kind of thing. crank users do.
Oh boy, you're gonna have to remind me about Rails. So this is our resources like we're defining APIs right now.
So the routes file defines the URLs that Rails listens to and where they should route, like which controller they should route to.
Okay. Got it.
So I'm going to try something like this.
So like line 14, resources crank users tells us that there is a crank users resource that we can reference like as a URL, like whatever /crank users. All that's defined in it right now is more resource, a child resource of crank counts.
Right. Except I need to do this.
And only is defining the actions that you can take.
Yeah. So if I didn't provide the only bit, it would give us all the typical CRUD application, CRUD actions you might take. So that's create, read, update, destroy. And then what do you get? Like show and edit or something. But anyway, so like those pretty typical ones. So I'm going to try this. So one way I sometimes work when I'm kind of spiking out some stuff, this feels like a bit of a spike, is I write some code in this config routes file, and then I go back over to my terminal and I run Rails routes. And I like
B expands to bundle.
Yeah, B expands to bundle exec. Which is a Rubyism for execute the following command in the context of my gem bundle. Okay, this is a bit noisy. Sorry for that.
If you're JavaScripty.
Yeah.
Like so npm run.
You can see a few things here. You can see that we now have 4 routes added, 4 URLs routes added to our application. 2 posts, 2 gets. A post and a get for crank users, and a post and a get for crank users for crank counts inside of crank users. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, you kind of see them. Ignore the format bit. That's like about whether you're going to respond to JSON or something else. In our case, this isn't nothing too fancy.
Okay.
It even gives us some controller and action ideas. Okay, so that is what I thought. And if I compare that with what we had here, so crank users, I'm always
yeah, you can.
Did I get the plural right? Did I get the ID right? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at here. Okay, and then
snake case.
New. Yeah, exactly. So I'm just like making sure that my intuition around what Rails would default to matches the output here. It does. So I'm going to now switch gears and want to like test drive this a little bit. And I know that you hate tests, but let's just pretend that testing is cool.
That's so not true.
I know. Crank champ. How about like the spike on crank champ? Spike.
All right, so you're checking out a new branch.
Yeah, check out a new branch.
Crank champ.
Yep. And I'm going to touch a spec in the requests folder. API in here? Yeah. So this would be like V1. Oh, right. So this needs to be. Wait, but this is a. Hold on. This is not an API endpoint. This is a page that someone would see.
Yes.
Here.
Yep. Totally.
So this would be a system test. And it's in the crank.
Can you describe the difference between what you just said?
Sorry. Yes.
What you had and what you have now.
Thank you for stopping me. I'm so.
No, I mean this is like
so
this is just like a flashback to when I started at Artsy, where like you would do things and I'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Okay, let me do it this way. Split spec. Oh man, come on, John. Have equals spec. Okay, so this is the contents of the spec folder. So in Rails land, you often use a library called rspec. Rspec has conventions around what kind of tests are in which folder. So for instance, your business logic, your models is often found in the model folder. I was working with either requests or system. Requests take the form of something like this. So get, meaning what verb do I want to send to my server? What URL do I want to send it to? I'm going to send it as JSON. And then I'm going to assert about like response codes. the body of the response. Those it's very like machine oriented.
Mm-hmm.
System, on the other hand,
and this all assumes that like when this test runs, do you have a server running that you're testing against, or is it like spinning? Is it just like some sort of like mock situation? It's an actual server.
It runs against a separate database. It starts a Postgres transaction. So any kind of models you create, update, whatever, are all torn down at the end. And it actually even between tests so that you maintain test isolation. And then a server is booted. And so they take a lot of time. You know, they're not fast like a Jest spec might be because you have to pay the penalty of booting Rails. But you're actually executing every part of the stack.
It's a real test. Yeah.
But it's not a browser. So that's what system tests are. So system tests actually are running in a headless browser environment. So if I look at, I don't know, this model counts thing. So it also has things like URLs, but instead of get, we're saying visit. And now we're in capybara land. So capybara is a gem that sits in front of the browser and drives it to do certain things. So here I've visited a URL. I've said I want to find all the TRs. I've mapped them into the text of the TR. So now I'm like pretending I'm a user and I'm asserting about what I see on the screen.
Yeah, and you could, if you wanted to, you could like click on links, click on buttons, have actions.
This is a bad example because I don't have any of that interaction, but maybe this does. Yeah, so like visit, click on, fill in, click on. So like you're trying to simulate the behavior a user might actually perform, and then you're going to assert about what they see when they do that. Oh boy, did I lose you? All right, I'm just going to hope that Steve comes back. So where I was headed was I wanted to touch a system spec crank users, and I want to, or you crank, what was it? Crank counts. And then this is going to be like, oh boy, I see that Steve dropped. So we're just gonna do our best here, folks. So the idea is, I'm kind of like jumping around a little bit here, but my thought was, at the time that we're sending this URL to my Rails server, we should already have a user. They should have a user ID. And so I should be able to like assume that the user is created. I'm being very hand wavy here, but I kind of want to focus in on the part that's more interesting to me, which is the creation of the crank count record for the user. So we'll try that. So the way I'm going to try to phrase this test is like, yeah, so let me do this. So touch spec system crank counts. Oh, I need to make that directory first. Okay. Then I can touch. That's going to be like crank user creates crank count. Hi, Steve. You're back.
I'm back. My internet took a big spaz. Oh, that's bad.
Sorry.
Took a big dump.
That sucks. I was fumbling and saying ums a lot, but what I'm trying to do is say,
I'm glad I missed it.
I'm trying to name a system spec because the context we're in is someone's got their phone, they took a picture of a QR code, and they're going to, in their phone's browser, see a page.
Yes.
And so when you're in that context, you should create a system test. A request spec is not appropriate there. That's more for like machine land.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So the way
this page is going to have like form fields on it and stuff.
Yes, you got it.
Maybe like disabled form fields that they can't edit.
I guess it's like I haven't quite figured it out yet. Some of this is like truly a spike to just kind of figure that out.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so gosh, there it is. Okay, so crank user creates crank count, and you say like spec.rb. Okay. And then I can run that file, which contains no information, like so. it should just be like, yeah, whatever. There's nothing in there. Okay. So now we can go up to here. And this one, oops, require Rails helper.
What comes from Rails helper?
Rails helper is, so there's two things you might put there. One is spec helper and one is Rails helper. When you put spec helper in, you do not boot Rails. When you put Rails helper in, you are booting Rails.
Got it.
Never put spec helper in a system file, but you might maybe put it in more like a model file.
Sure.
If it was the case that your model was like just a plain old Ruby object and you didn't actually need or like depend on Rails, but you wanted a really fast test. That's a lot of words. Okay, so describe.
Thank you.
Crank user creates crank. Oh my God, crank count. Okay, and that's a context. No, context scenario.
What? So I don't think I'm familiar with. I would have expected context. What is scenario instead?
Yeah.
Is that specific to system tests? Is that why I haven't seen it?
Yeah. It's an alias for it, but it sounds more.
Oh, it's more like
in keeping with like a user story.
BDD type of thing. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
But I'm going to ignore that part and just like try to make something happen. So if I visit the URL, and that's like this one, this, oh boy. Then I could expect page to have content. Okay, so this is like sliming. This is what I've heard this called as. I'm just trying to establish that like it's possible to visit this page, and I'd love a red here saying there's no foo on this page. What are you talking about? Like that would be fine because it would give me some validation I'm on the right track. So
totally.
I'll run that again. I think it'll do. I'm not sure what it's going to do. Okay, what do we got? That's quite the.
I can't read that at all.
Okay, so this is the line that matters. Uninitialized constant crank counts controller.
How good are your eyes that you can read that? Red on black? It's garbage. It's like that's
hard for
trombone teacher talking.
Trombone teacher? Talking about Charlie Brown?
Yeah.
Let's see, can I get it 900 by 600? Let's see.
It's not the size, it's the color.
Oh,
it's
okay.
the contrast.
All right. Well, I didn't know that.
Anyways, what does it say?
It's giving us an action controller routing error, uninitialized constant crank counts controller. So when we were back here and we were fucking around with this part, I was telling Rails some information, including the name of the controller it should route the request to. But I didn't make the controller. I skipped all the way to the other end of the system. So like here I said that here's the URL. And the other end of the system, I said, here's a test trying to visit that URL. I did none of the paperwork in between.
So you didn't actually tell it what the controller name is. It inferred the name of the controller based on the name of the resource.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And so this is good red.
That's Rails magic
parlance of testing. Yep. And so now I need to comply with this contract and create a controller. Oh, I mean, two things, I guess. Either change the error or comply with the error. So compliance here would be to create this controller. That's what I want to do.
Make the test pass.
I could make a different controller assumption here. That's not what I want to do. Maybe that was more confusing than I should have been. Okay, so I'm going to touch app controllers, crank count, controller RB. Okay, and then controller crank count. So this would be like class crank count God. Which inherits from application controller. Oh boy, it's not what I meant to do at all. I meant to write that file. And I meant to run the spec again. So all I'm trying to do is change my error message. And crank counts. Okay, my bad. This should have been with an S. God, we have 9 minutes left, Steve.
So you're running the test again. It's failing. And it says...
Oh my God. Okay, so I made the constant names match,
constant,
but I didn't name the file correctly. So now there's another bit of Rails magic here that there's auto loading of constants and files here. So I'm not playing nicely with Rails conventions.
So it needs to be plural in the controller name or in the file name.
I'm just gonna open app controllers and just fucking use Finder to rename this. This should be crank counts. And it will properly auto load it. This is now a bad buffer.
Tested.
Okay, we got a new error, Steve.
I can't tell.
The action new could not be found for cranks.
Okay.
So
so now we can assume it can find the controller. It just doesn't have the actions on it.
Yes. Now the way to change this error message, controller crank, is to do this.
Okay.
But I don't really want to do that because I don't actually have anything to put in here yet. So another way to change this error is to make the view for that action and kind of leapfrog over that error. So muckadir at views counts, and then touch that folder new.html. I'm using Haml in this project. Okay, so now I don't have the method, but that's okay. Rails allows you to not define the method if you have a view,
right,
a Haml view.
Because all you would need to do if it was just a simple display page is like maybe create some data that you would display on the page. But if you don't have any data, you just give it the view and it's going to assume that you don't need to actually do anything to render it.
100% correct. Okay, let's see what it says. OMG, we did it.
Does it say foo is not found on the page?
Expected to find text foo in admin password, sign in.
Sounds good. Hey, now I can read it.
Does yellow on black help
that
you?
I can read.
Should have done that the whole time. Okay. So what this reminds me of is that by default, all of the pages in my by default, inheriting from application controller means you're required to enter the admin password in order to view that page. And so we can skip that requirement. And many pages do, including, it's a good example, this one. So we'll just skip that before action.
Okay.
Okay. Expected to find text foo in empty string. What's even cooler is that it took a ping of what the browser saw and put it somewhere. And so now I can actually command click on that and see that I literally drew an empty screen.
And this is a screenshot.
And that's a screenshot. Okay, so now I can go to eview crank counts new. I can throw an H1
foo
create your cranks photo. Right? Something stupid like that.
This is Haml, not HTML.
This is Haml.
I can't. Are those percent signs? Is that what's leading those?
Correct.
Lines 1 and 3.
Yep.
Okay. I can't really read anything. We got to change your
this is terrible.
Theme. Your theme before this.
This is like
it's
part
really
of
hard
my
to read.
core personality that this is my theme. So this is going to be really hard for me. Okay, but all
I
I'm
believe
trying to
in.
demonstrate here is we have some things wired up, and then we can kind of iterate from
Yes.
here. In fact,
And we got a passing test. Woo.
yeah, and if I went to start, I'd actually be able, because like so far I haven't even booted a Rails server. I haven't done anything in my own browser. All I've done is TDD. And so now I could go to Safari. I could go to localhost. Like so crank. Let's see, crank users. EPC 123. Crank counts. New. Hey.
Create your cranks, foo.
Yep.
That's great. To kind of what would be cool. This is a total sidetrack, but like it'd be cool if I bet there's some sort of app that we can find that is just like a QR reader in the browser that we can then like connect that whole thing end to end of put it on the Playdate, end up on this page. Be great.
I looked for this because I had this. It's so funny how in sync we are, because I had the same thought and I looked and I couldn't easily find it. I tried. Really? I saw someone talking about like you can use like the Mac app called Photo Booth to like change the camera to be your phone. Like I'm like,
that sounds like a bad time.
That sounds like a bad time.
Okay, doesn't matter. Unimportant, because you're able to get to this page.
Yeah.
So really, we in the end we'll just need to like make sure that we get the URL absolutely correct.
Right. So we have 3 minutes left, and I feel like we didn't do a ton, but we did.
Can we program the whole rest of the system in 3 minutes?
No, we can't. I mean, we could do things like let's see.
I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of. Like
I think we should be able to say like
we've wired together the whole sequence of the flow, right?
Yeah.
It's like walking skeleton at this point, a little bit. And so we'll now be able to fill in more of the pieces along the way, more of the guts.
Like this should be user code or like code or something.
Where does that user come from?
Fabricate user. So we should be able to make a thing in our database called a crank user. We should be able to supply its code when we visit this page. And then we should be able to say ticks equals
69.
To click on create, and then it'd be like, have content created.
Right. Okay. Yep.
And then we should be like crank user dot crank counts dot first.
And so that's now accessing the database again.
Yes.
To see that we actually like entered that ledger.
Something like that.
Yep.
That's a test I wanted to write an hour ago, but we had to do a bunch of things to get us to the place where this even made any kind of sense, I think.
Yes.
And so mostly what we need are actually kind of what you were saying, where there's like a view that needs to have maybe some hidden inputs or whatever, and needs to like respond to this ticks param and then like write that into one of them.
Yeah.
This kind of thing. We also need a date.
Sure. Like today.
What's the name of the property though? It's like cranked on. You know what I mean? Like we need some idea of days.
So this is more Rails magic, right? Like this is like, or maybe not. Is it Rails magic or
no? We need to like supply this.
Magic?
We need like I don't know. I mean,
okay.
Or maybe we just have it be equal to the day you create it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want people to be able to lie about which day They created a cranks, like it should be generated or interpreted by the.
We don't want liars. That's 100% true.
Yeah. All right. So we're
How do we wrap this
like
up?
we got closer to the dream of having this test pass.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's like a good starting point for the next time. Is let's just focus on the test. And the nice thing is, I think the next time we hang out, we don't have to do. We probably won't have 25 minutes of a PR to review.
Right.
When it's 15 minutes of a PR to review, 10 minutes to just like bullshit.
Yeah.
So we can maybe roll on that right away. And then we still have to figure out the user concept on the Playdate, but that can be the next thing.
Yeah. I would love to see what a Playdate.key, like there's a Playdate API called something .keyboard. I would love to learn a little bit more about that before I gloss over this user ID thing, just so I know like how terrible is it. Like, do I want the user code to be like 6 characters? Maybe that's a humane number of characters for someone to use a Playdate's keyboard for, but like no more than that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at some point there's another Rails side too of like validating that user ID to make sure that it's unique.
Right.
Or maybe not. Maybe we just don't care. Just like if 7 people want to be Steve 3, they can do that and share each other's cranks.
All right. Speaking of sharing cranks, it has been an absolute pleasure to hang out with you tonight, Steve.
As always.
Thanks for that. For those of you that are new to this program, it's usually like this, and I'm sorry that that's true. I don't know.